Welcome to the Atlanta Startup Podcast. I am Waima DK, the Managing Director of Startup Runway, the leading platform linking underrepresented founders to capital and investors. And so I'm super excited on this episode of the Atlanta Startup Podcast. I'm here to welcome Janessa Ferrel, founder of QuestRead. Now, QuestRead is dedicated to improving literacy through interactive reading experiences tailored to children's interests and learning levels. And what's really awesome about Janessa is that she snagged the Women's Empowerment Award at the 25th edition of the Startup Runway Pitch Showcase recently. And so we are really glad and excited to welcome Janessa. Thank you for joining the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to see you again.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. Please share about QuestRead and ultimately what brought you to solving this particular problem.
Yeah, so QuestRead is primarily a reading game for children aged 5 to 11 who have to practice reading, and they may love practicing reading already, or maybe they dislike practicing and are falling behind. Either way, in order to continue to become a confident, successful reader, they need to be practicing regularly. So we make it a fun experience for them where they immerse themselves in a game as they read books out loud, they listen to books, and then their reading activity actually progresses the game. So they're competing against other players, they earn prizes in the app, and in real life, we send prizes in the mail to kids. And everything we do is designed to encourage them to spend more time reading.
And so what brought you to solving this particular problem?
Well, I spent the past 20 years working with children who were struggling with reading as a reading specialist and an elementary teacher. And I'm a mom of three and a foster parent. And so I worked a lot with kids who had these issues. And I learned a lot about the research behind reading and what actually worked in moving the needle in reading with kids and what kids actually needed. And so I looked around for tools to use with these kids, and there was nothing available that my students liked to work with. And so I decided that I would build something that they would love and that would actually work for them. And so I went to work in tech for a few years first to learn my own self, to develop my skills for a few years, a product manager in another ed tech company. And then last year, we started QuestRead with myself and two other developers.
I love that. Well, also I am a mom. I have two bonus kids. They're now 13 and 11 going on 47. But I do remember like how the difference between learning tools that thought about how to make it fun and engaging. And so I 100% resonate with what you're building with QuestRead. And I just imagine that it's making a lot of lives as from the parents and teachers perspective easier, and also just making learning engaging for the students and the children. So I really am excited about this particular product. And so thank you. And in terms of your experience now as a founder, how have you found that to be relative to working particularly one-on-one with students, or as an educator and as an employee at another tech startup? How have you found it being a founder?
Yeah, of course, when you've switched from the classroom to working in tech, there was a huge shift there. My husband's a developer, so I'd always message him and be like, what are these weird acronyms they're using? I don't understand, right? And I was taking night school to learn product management skills, and there's a lot of learning there. But when you're learning and you're put in that situation, it helps you empathize for the people that you're working with. And I think one of the things that I feel very strongly about as a founder is that I need to be very close to my end user, and that I have that ability to do that all the time. I'm still tutoring kids on the side. I'm still working with them one-on-one. I have three kids my own. One of this is going into second grade. So I'm around them all the time. I can't get too disconnected from it. And that's something that I want to continue to do throughout my journey here.
And to just be frank, on my side, that's my favorite type of founder that was really passionate about being as close to the end user and the person they're trying to serve through their product, through their startup, as possible. So that is awesome, and it reflects in what you're building and what you've built so far. And so, what have you found to be the most challenging about your journey building QuestRead so far?
I think the most challenging thing right now
Mhm.
is scarcity of capacity, I guess. There's only
Mm,
one of me, and we have a small team. And so you have to wear many hats. So you're constantly
mhm,
prioritizing. Are you focusing right now on sales or product or fundraising? You can't do everything all at the same time. So constantly trying to juggle the priorities and stretch resources. So that's probably the biggest challenge right now.
mhm. And that's kind of the name of the game, the name of the game. I want to switch gears slightly. I wanted to, one, I mentioned that you were one of our winners at the Startup Runway showcase, our 25th one. So it was kind of a big deal of a showcase for Startup Runway. And you were one of our winners, particularly for women's empowerment. And so I wanted to first ask, how was your experience that day? And how did you prepare?
Yeah, I found the whole experience so encouraging and just inspiring. I loved the way that we met with mentors before the pitches and we sat at tables and they came out and we could set the agenda to talk with them. And then meeting with the other founders and hearing what they're building was really inspiring and motivating too. And then especially hearing the founders who came back and spoke, who had won previous rounds, I thought that was a really great experience too. Um, to prepare for it, I just practice. I mean, I spent most of my life speaking in front of second graders, I guess, and different groups of folks. So I have no trouble speaking in front of people, but trying to remember your lines and memorize it, and just getting feedback from different folks. That was what I did to prepare.
It's good. Well, practice makes perfect, and it worked out. It definitely worked out for you.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Um, yes. So I would along those similar lines, not just for preparation for a pitch, but in general, you're gaining momentum with Quest Read. And so for someone who's building something right now, who may be listening and maybe a couple steps behind you in their journey as a founder, what advice might you give them or whoever that listener may be?
I would say find a problem that you care deeply about because it's going to be a long road and there's going to be a lot of hurdles along the way, a lot of ups and downs. And if you don't really care about that problem, it's going to be really hard to stay motivated through it. And then also try to validate your solution as quickly as possible. So in the early days of QuestRead, I created kind of a really simple MVP of this where kids could record their voice and I give them rewards along the way and kind of this duct tape version, right? And that helped validate some of my early assumptions. So trying to test these things along the way. The other thing too, right now, I am both a teacher and a mother. And so I'm kind of both my customers as well.
Mhm.
So I have to put my own bias to the side in the way that I
Mm,
think about this, because what I've learned through customer discovery is that I am not my ideal user in a lot of ways,
mhm,
and that influences the way I do the product. And so I need to set that aside and listen very carefully to what people are telling me rather than to what I want them to say or what I think
mhm,
they want. So for me, documenting interviews and conversations has been really helpful so I can look back in a more unbiased way.
mhm. Well, customer discovery is incredibly powerful. And it's very interesting how many people run really fast to start something without doing some customer discovery, having the right conversations with their end users and their customer. Um, and so I'm really glad that you highlight that, especially for those who are really starting in that journey. Like interview folks, and not just your friends, but the folks that would who are not within your circle, who you hope would open up their wallet and pay for whatever you're building. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. I wanted to know to give you a chance to share about what's next for QuestRead, what's on the kind of the very close horizon in terms of goals or things that you're trying to do or launch in the next few months or so.
Yeah, so right now we're focused a lot on building out the gameplay of the app because we've seen that a lot of positive results there. So parents and
Mhm.
children, they both love the game elements we have so far. And we're leaning into that to continue to expand. We're having badge achievements getting released really soon. We're adding all sorts of new fun game elements. I won't even say too much about what that might be, but leave it a bit of a surprise. We're
Nice.
also doing some great partnerships with some nonprofits in the Atlanta area. And this fall, looking at school pilots to be getting
Mm.
into the school districts as well to learn how it works in that environment and get some feedback.
Mhm. That's awesome. That's exciting. So a bunch of new kids, set of kids that are going to be integrating with your app in the next few months and giving you some keen feedback. That's really exciting for QuestRead. So congrats on that progress so far.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. And so I would like to give you a chance to share a bit around um, any last thoughts that you might have for founders, for listeners, for and listeners also could be investors and those who are really excited about the our ecosystem here in the South. Any lot kind of lingering thoughts or things you want to make sure you share?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I've been learning, this is more of a personal growth story, I guess, is to not limit yourself by the box that you put yourself in. So sometimes we have ideas about who we are and what we're capable of and what our path is. And for me, I always thought I was going to be an elementary teacher. I loved that. It was really fulfilling. And I didn't actually think that I could do something more than that or that I should do something more than that. But now that I'm doing it, I can see when, a small success leads to big success. And so you learn and you gain confidence in yourself as you go. So I would just challenge folks that if you have a dream or a goal that you're passionate about, that you want to do, but you feel like maybe you're not the right person to do it, just to take baby steps in that direction. And if you set a small goal for yourself, you win that, then you can set a next one and you just kind of keep moving on and keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Then you kind of go beyond that box and you'll be able to stretch yourself and actually be proud of the things that you've done.
I love that message. It's really keen to hear, especially for those who what I call this version of entrepreneurship, like a certain type of crazy, because you have to convince a whole host of different people about an idea that does not exist, and you have to speak about it as if it does. And so, particularly women, sometimes people of color who might not see themselves in this space very often reflected, it might be easier for folks to count themselves out as worthy and capable to play and actually deliver something and solve some really big problems in the way that you're doing with QuestRead. And so I really appreciate you sharing that as kind of your parting thoughts. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, I would love for folks to have a sense of how they can stay connected to you, to what's going on with QuestRead. How can folks follow up with you or follow you, whether socials or via email or whatever mode of communication?
Yeah, our website is questread.com, and on social media, we're at QuestRead, so easy to remember. If you
Mhm.
do have elementary kids, you can download the app on the App Store. It's called QuestRead. So you can find us in all those places, and we'd love for you to follow along and give us your feedback and ideas.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Janessa, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Atlanta Startup Podcast.